Xin chào các bạn. Tiếp theo cái bài hồi nãy nói về hệ thống cáp mạng thì bây giờ mình có tìm trên cái YouTube thêm một số cái video clip mình tạm gọi là chuyện nghề số 15, nói về cái hệ thống cáp mạng, hệ thống cáp trong hệ thống mạng nó là cái gì. Thì toàn bộ clip này nó bằng tiếng Anh, cho nên rằng là các bạn sẽ hơi bị khó hiểu nếu mà tiếng Anh bạn hơi bị ít từ vựng. Thì mình sẽ cố gắng bật cái title bên dưới, phụ đề bên dưới, để các bạn dễ hiểu hơn. Thì cái bài này rất là hay nha các bạn hãy cố gắng xem và học rất là hay cho những cái bạn đang thi công hệ thống cáp mạng, cấp quang và cấp đồng trong nhà máy, trong trung tâm dữ liệu, và có thể ở nhà, hoặc các bạn những lắp hệ thống camera CCTV cũng nên xem qua đó. Rồi ok, mình sẽ một cái bài này nó cũng mình tìm được hai ba clip, nó cũng khá là dài. Các bạn mình xin mời các bạn xem qua. Và mình tên là Lộc, mình luôn chia sẻ những bài chuyện nghề và làm theo tiêu chuẩn.
It is the design and installation of a cabling systems that will support multiple hardware user systems and be suitable for today's needs and those of the future. For example, Cat5e, Cat6 or Cat6a can be part of a bundled structured cable design cable, thus providing the infrastructure to connect a phone, PC, CCTV camera, Wi-Fi, TV or music server. In this instance, all by just plugging in differently at the main cable area, where all the cables originate from. Why is structured cabling important? Without a cabling infrastructure that is structured for all technology, your future growth will be limited. Indeed, one of the biggest examples of this is old telephone wiring for PBX systems that now need upgrading for VoIP. Legacy CCTV cabling and Wi-Fi cabling is also increasingly being required to be changed recently, due to increase in technology and surpassing old cabling standards. Data cabling standards. The data cabling systems is administered under a guideline of set cabling standards, so that installations follow a consistently of installation and quality with an allowance of expansion and coverage of the technologies it is installed to link and operate. The standards cover a range of expectations such as how the cabling should enter a building and be terminated, the type, construction and size of the entrance facility, the construction and size of the communications room and cabinet, the number of cables to allow per user and workspace area, the containment allowances for these cables, installation and terminating guidelines for the cables, testing and labeling expectations. Network cabling design. What is structured cabling in networking design based on? The correct design of the structured cabling will provide predictable performance and aid future expansion. Furthermore, assist in easier future relocations, moves and changes. In essence, it's looking at the cabling design, like an architect would do with a building or home, and see how best to bring all the required elements together and work as one harmonious system. If the cabling is lacking in design, the technology systems will lack in performance and operation. The design will consider whether to cable directly to each location where desks and furniture are not expected to move, or whether to cable to distribution points which then link locally to desks, allowing for easier future moves and rearrangements of desks and furniture. The structured cabling system should cover all elements of the building hardware and technology requirements, and bring them all into a central design. This design would include the cabinet space and locations, and whether they are in a single location or split over several floors, and how the various locations are linked, whether via copper or fiber optic cabling. The containment and spaces that the cabling will travel through will also be a design consideration. The cabling must be correctly contained and supported to enable longevity and performance. The structured cabling spaces and containment must also allow for future growth of additional cables to travel through these areas. 40% fill on initial install, and 60% maximum fill is the BISCI standard. For example, categories of cabling. Structured cabling can consist of a single specific standard of data cabling, such as Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a or fiber optics. It also in some cases will specify different categories of cable, dependent on what has been requested and specified by each hardware provider. The differences in cable could be a requirement to meet termination practices, containment limitations, or installation costs. The overall design could call for Cat6a data cabling to desks for PCs and phones for 10 gig, Cat6 for CCTV, Cat5e to access control, and dual Cat6a to Wi-Fi. The best solution would be to cable the overall solution to the highest standard cabling category, so that in the future all systems could work off the same data cabling, but the other considerations of containment and cost are also important to take into consideration. All hardware has a bandwidth and speed requirement, for which the correct data cabling infrastructure must be installed, to enable that hardware to perform at its required levels and work as required. An example would be a requirement for a 10 gig connection at 80 meters, which would require a structured cabling system of Cat6a cabling to be installed, as Cat5e and Cat6 would not support these transmission requirements. Importance of data cabling testing. Structured cabling also outlines a consistency of termination, testing, and labeling. There are several standards of terminations when it comes to copper data cabling and fiber optic data cabling. Problems arise if different standards are followed by different installers. Thus, over an ongoing timeline, users will find that certain outlets don't work when moving hardware. In this instance, because the ports are wired to a different termination standard. Testing parameters and standards are also important, as without fully tested data cabling results, the end user will not know if that cable has been installed correctly and within the maximum distance, installed in the correct separation distances and bend radius, been terminated correctly both ends, has been tested and confirmed to work to a set standard of transmission tests. Without these test results showing full passes, the user will find problems in their hardware performance in the present and ongoing into the future. Structured cabling labeling. The consistency of labeling is also a very important part of a structured cabling installation. The labeling should be designed in advance and follow an easy-to-follow outline. The labeling should specify some or all of the following: the cabinet or floor number, the outlet number, the floor box or cluster number, in some cases. Different floors or cabinets will also at times have different color outlet labels and panels. An example would be a blue label marked 3 by 15 by 4. Third floor, floor box 15, outlet number 4. Structured cabling documentation. What is structured cabling in networking when it comes to the correct documentation? The completed data cabling system should be accompanied by the test results and a full set of drawings and documentation. This will depend on the size of the building and the requirements of the end user, but can consist of the following: marked up drawings with outlet numbers for each location, communication cabinet layouts, floor-to-floor cabling schematics, test results, manufacturer data sheets. As hardware changes rapidly, and the data cabling requirements to those change with them, a focus on a structured cabling systems, rather than quick cabling requirement only for the present, is becoming more of a necessity. Power over Ethernet requirements have changed immensely, and the cabling requirements to handle these data and electrical requirements will exceed legacy cabling installations quite quickly. With a focus on data cabling design, and then implementing a correctly installed system, your requirements of today and of tomorrow will be catered for, and whatever hardware you choose to add or change will be supported. For a free quotation, please visit our website nmcabling.co.uk or call at 019238888588.
Xin chào các bạn. Cái clip này rất là ngắn. Thì mình tóm tắt như sau. Để quản trị cái hệ thống cáp thì chúng ta đầu tiên chúng ta phải có một cái sơ đồ đi cáp, rồi theo đúng chuẩn của sơ đồ đi cáp này, rồi sau đó bố trí cáp, rồi chúng ta sẽ đi cáp theo cái sơ đồ đó. Chúng ta sẽ đi cáp theo đúng chuẩn của BISCI, TAA, ANSI, rồi chúng ta đi cáp theo đúng chuẩn từ góc cong trên cái máng cáp như thế nào, để cho không tránh tình trạng là bị suy hao cáp. Thứ hai là chúng ta bấm đầu, nếu có là chúng ta đã bấm theo chuẩn. Rồi tiếp theo chúng ta phải đánh nhãn, tức là thế nó gọi là label cho hai đầu cáp, đầu phía này và đầu phía kia. khi đánh dấu trên cáp rồi chúng ta phải đánh dấu ở trên cái outlet nữa, hoặc là back panel, hoặc là trên switch, hoặc là chúng ta nối cái đầu cáp nó vô thiết bị nào đó thì chúng ta đánh dấu ở đầu đó. Rồi chúng ta đánh vô outlet nữa, từ outlet bao nhiêu số bao nhiêu theo đúng chuẩn TAA, ANSI, COMSCOP, BISCI đó, thì chúng ta sẽ dễ quản lý cáp hơn, và chúng ta khi mà nó xảy ra sự cố thì chúng ta dễ gỡ cáp, chúng ta dễ thao tác, dễ quản lý. Đó là nền tảng cơ bản của hệ thống cáp, quản trị hệ thống cáp. Rồi ok, chúng ta sẽ tiếp theo đây là một số cái bài học chia sẻ từ trên mạng thì chúng ta sẽ xem qua. Bây giờ đây có 2 bài thì theo mình bài nào cũng rất là quan trọng. 2 bài bên tay trái mình nha, và một bài trên chính giữa, đó là structure coupling, cấu trúc hệ thống cáp theo tiêu chuẩn là COMTA A+220-1101-406, và một cái bài học là theo tiêu chuẩn BISCI 002-2019 Data Center Presentation for CINM. Thì cái bài này, bài structure coupling thì nó dài khoảng 12 phút, cũng rất là hay, và bài BISCI 002-2019 cũng rất là hay, để mình sẽ gom chung vô. Các bạn chờ một tí xíu, mình sẽ gom ra, mình sẽ mở lần lượt cho các bạn xem, chúng ta cùng học, cùng ghi với nhau. Cái bài coupling thì chúng ta sẽ xem trước, cái phần structure coupling này chúng ta sẽ xem trước. Cái hệ thống này thì cái bài viết này sẽ được nằm trên cái trang YouTube của tên là NM Coupling Solution, và cái bài nói về BISCI 002-2019 Data Center Presentation thì nó nằm ở trên cái kênh YouTube của BISCI. Đây là trang YouTube BISCI, trang gốc của họ đó. Thì chúng ta sẽ lần lượt, thì tổng thời gian một cái clip này, số này của mình thì là khá là dài. Đó. Rồi ok,
projects that they had.
thì khoa mình xin tạm dừng một chút xíu, thì mình sẽ coi một clip về trước đi nhé. Coi clip về trước đi. Chúng ta đang chia sẻ về BISCI NCTA, thì chúng ta sẽ overview lại, xem lại là BISCI họ là ai. Có sự thảo luận của Christopher Horst, người đã là một cái kỹ sư về hạ tầng cấp mạng, đã được đạt chứng chỉ của BISCI. Danh giá của BISCI bao gồm chứng chỉ RCDD, RTBM, DCDS và OSP. Đó, thì mình sẽ xem trước này trước nha, xem trước đi rồi rồi chúng ta sẽ xem mấy cái kia sau. Ok, chúng ta sẽ tua lại cho nó nhanh. Ok các bạn. Rồi ok, chúng ta cùng xem và nghe cái clip này. Nó cũng khá là bao nhiêu phút ta, cũng 1 tiếng hồ lận đó, cho nên là cái clip chuyện nghề của mình khá dài, mình sẽ gom rất dài. Nó hoàn toàn bằng tiếng Anh nha các bạn, cho nên là mình cũng không có dịch kịp cho các bạn. Mình sẽ mở cái phụ đề cho các bạn cố gắng xem qua. Ok, chúng ta let's go.
Questions I get is about certification and career path. And no doubt that those things will improve your performance and improve your ability to make money. So this week, we're talking to BISCI.
Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling Podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you got to ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? In this podcast, you'll learn the differences between a 66 and 110 punch tool, the proper way to install a support cable, along with testing and certifying the cable. What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. So join us as we talk about the ever-changing world of telecommunications. From ISP to OSP, from copper to fiber, design to installation. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Christopher Hobbs. Christopher Hobbs is, I came across him in some of my circles running around in Cable Dog University on Facebook, and I've emailed him a few times, and we've met at a BISCI conference, although I don't remember that, and I apologize because, I meet lots of people at BISCI conferences.
Didn't have the beard back then.
There you go. Welcome to the show, Christopher. How you doing today?
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Chuck.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So for those who may not know you, why don't you tell us who you are and give us just a little background about your experience and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I've been in the ICT industry since the early 90s. I started in 93 as a technician for a computer company, and that's back when we were building PCs and networking was first starting to happen. And I got to come in when Ethernet and Token Ring and ThickNet and ThinNet and all the other good things that were going on back in the early 90s. And the company I worked for started doing network cabling, and I really was more interested in that, and I didn't see a future in computers because I thought they were going to become a commodity. So I had a coworker. We did quite a few network installations, and the owner of the company decided he didn't really want to do that anymore. He wanted to focus on his computer building business. So I left along with my coworker, and we started a network cabling and consulting company. And we did that for several years, and then he split with me. He went his way and took kind of the construction side of it, and I took the consulting and design side of the business. So I did that for a couple of years, and I picked up a contract to go work in South America. So I actually spent a year living in Venezuela and another year living in Guyana, setting up network infrastructure, radio and satellite communications for an engineering firm that was doing gold and diamond exploration in Venezuela and Guyana. So I came back home and I was looking for a job, and this was in the around 2007. And I got hired by a company that was looking for a project manager to manage some very large projects that they had. So I started out with them and set up their project management office. That's when I got my BICSI RTPM. Back then it was actually the TPM, and then it got changed into the RTPM. And what I learned was that as you're doing project management, you start doing a lot of design work. So I got my RCDD and was doing that. And around about 2014, as everybody knows, as a project manager, you're on 24 by 365. You never get a break. So I was kind of looking for a little bit of a break. I had 2 young kids at the time, and I wanted to spend more time at home. And BICSI was actually looking to hire full-time instructors. So I applied, and I got hired on by BICSI in 2014 and became a full-time instructor for them for a couple years. And then they were looking to, the individual that was managing our program for our partners. We have partners that are globally that facilitate our content, our design and our installation programs. He was moving on to another opportunity. So they gave me the opportunity to advance and move up as the manager of training provider services for BICSI. So I currently handle our partners globally. We have quite a few certified trainers globally, and then we have over 90 partner organizations that we work with. And that's pretty much what I do now. I have my RCDD, my RTPM, my outside plan, as well as my data center design consultant, or my BICSI credentials, plus some credentials from other organizations outside BICSI.
So it sounds like you're pretty well versed and a perfect fit for the role that you're doing now. It's funny because when I'm telling people my credentialing, I always put in there former certified trainer because I used to be the BICSI certified trainer for Hinkles McCoy many years ago. So I always make sure I put in that word former so that way people don't think I'm still a trainer. I tell you what, that was a tough class. That was a TE 300, I think it was.
Yeah, so it's the TE350 for the installation program, which we still have around, and then we have our train the trainer class, the T3, which is what one of the classes that I teach for BICSI. Usually we bring in another TDS as well to assist, and that's where we actually take people with BICSI credentials and we turn them into certified trainers. And as you know, being able to explain it, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And that's really what we try to do, is ensure that people can explain topics simply.
We have a real technical industry, and that's a challenge as an instructor because it's a dry subject. So you got to find a way to bring it to life. So a lot of times I'll use examples from my past experiences and stuff, and then they can usually relate to that and stuff. So as I'm teaching, because I teach, 75 classes a year as in my current role, my day job. And I've probably, if I did the calculation once, I'm probably about 20,000 people that I've taught over my career. And I would say probably about 25 to 30% of the people I talk to have never heard of BICSI. And that always kind of amazed me because BICSI does a great job of putting its name out there and what they do. And I always wondered, well, how's BICSI putting a message out to let them know who they are? How do you guys overcome that challenge?
So one of the things that we do is marketing. We do attend trade shows that are not just BICSI trade shows. One of the things we've done is reached out to the National Electrical Contractors Association, and we attend their shows. We attend quite a few of the data center shows that are out there. Of course, with COVID happening in the last year, that's kind of cut down on the ability to do that. So we're trying to ramp that back up, and we'll see where things fall out for next fiscal year for us, which starts July 1, and kind of what trade shows and other organizations that are out there that we can partner with. We also advertise in magazines and on websites and things of that nature.
Very good. So who is BICSI? If someone comes up to you and says, who's BICSI, how would you respond to that?
Sure. So one of the things that I would do is I would say BICSI stands for Building Industry Consulting Services International Incorporated. And the main thing to understand is BICSI is a nonprofit association. So we serve professionals in the ICT, or the Information and Communications Technology community. And what that means is we're run by our members. We're not a for-profit organization that's out there just selling courses and manuals and books and all these other things. We're actually run by our committees and our board of directors. So this is not something that individuals, go out there and it's a for-profit organization that's sole purpose is to gain money. Our sole purpose is to advance the ICT community. I mean, that's what we're about. We want to make sure that we're the preeminent global resource for developing standards, providing credentials, accreditation, and knowledge transfer for the ICT community. And that's really, I think, what we do a great job of. If you go to individuals who've been in our courses and taken our content or used our manuals or our standards, that they'll say that, we definitely have a step above what most of the organizations are that are out there.
Yeah, I've got several of your publications. Like I mentioned, I teach a lot of classes. Almost every single class, I always reference the pocket field guides.
Oh, those things are great.
I use them a lot. And I also have, a soft copy of the TMM. I got a copy of the wireless design manual. I'm actually just about ready to purchase copies of the ITSA manual. I was actually a long time ago. That's what the plaque on the back of wall is. You can't actually see it because of my big fat head. Many moons ago, I actually was on a couple committees to help write it. So I just gotta get plugged in. And it's funny, I tell people all the time, there's 4 ways you can answer any single question that gets thrown at you, right? You can answer how you were trained, and that may or may not be right, as you and I both know, right?
Oh, yes.
You can answer the way the code says to do it, and we know codes are for minimum quality construction or safety, or you can answer the way the standards say to do it, and the standards quite often mimic the code, but sometimes they exceed it, or the best way to answer the question is through a technical document like the TDMM or the ITSA manual or the pocket field guide, because they always exceed it, and they're going to give you best practice. I love those documents, and I think everybody should have them. I really do.
Yeah, that's the key term there, best practices. You've got your AHJ at the top of the pyramid, and that's your codes that you're going to have to follow. And then you've got your standards that are below that. And then you've got your best practices, which is really where you should be pulling that information. It ties both the codes and standards together. And then lastly is, the way we've always done it, or, what we've been trained by, which is oftentimes the least reliable way of determining how to answer a question.
And let's be honest, the authority having jurisdiction, for those of me, I know that's the electrical inspector. There's some good ones, but most of them, when it comes to low voltage, don't really understand our industry. And that's where these books really have helped me in the past because, like for example, in the code book, it says that the work's going to be done in a neat and workmanlike manner. Define that for me. That could my opinion of neat and workmanlike manner be different from somebody else's or different from yours? Oh, absolutely it could. So that's where this manual's come to play. You can say, look, it says right here, this is BISCI. You know who they are. You just explained. And they say to do it this way, and that's a best practice. And that helps you a lot. Never get an argument with an AHJ, but it gives you fuel for that fire to help prove your point in a non-confrontational kind of way.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, and that's the other thing, that's one of the things BISCI does provide. We provide that technical knowledge. I mean, not only do we have the technical publications and periodicals that we put out, but BISCI is an ANSI certified organization for publishing standards. And that's really important as well. So we have internationally adopted industry standards. And I know you've taken the Data Center 102 class, and that is based entirely on the BISCI 002 2019 Data Center Design Standard, which is a fantastic document for anybody that's out there that's going to be going and trying to build a data center, not just the computer room, but determining site location, determining your physical attributes for your building, your safety and security. I mean, there's so much that's in that standard that's just unbelievable for a 600-page document, the wealth of knowledge that you get in there.
It's a great class too, and I'm telling you right now, you better commit to it because there's a lot of information in it.
There's a lot
of information in it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I got my DCDS in 2011 off the 2011 version. It's a 2019. So gotcha. I will say, if you're going to take a test, take it now before it gets bigger.
One of the people in my TDMM study group that I'm running right now, it's all volunteer. We just kind of get together on Zoom once a week and we read 70 pages. Then we get together and we kind of talk about it. And one of the ladies who's in that group, she's new to the industry. She's only been in the industry for like 3 years, and she's already got her DC certification. And she's working toward a project. And she it's funny because I know a lot of information because I've been in the industry a long time. And she thinks I'm so knowledgeable. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. You got your DC first? I've been through that class. That's a hard class, So,
definitely a hard class. Well, I always tell people, the ICT industry is like this for knowledge. And I only know about that much.
Exactly.
But I know enough people to fill in the gaps there that I can contact and get those individuals involved if I don't know something.
Right.
And that's really what it's about, And it's great that she's doing professional development. I mean, that's one of the other things, BISCI we provide are those globally recognized credentials. And it's not just, in ICT design, but also in installation and project management. Those are really important for individuals that are trying to prove that they know something. And every credential I've ever gotten, the time, effort, and money that I've put into it has paid me back 100-fold for
Absolutely.
every one of the credentials that I've gotten. And it's entirely worth going and pursuing those credentials. And BISCI is a great organization to get them through because we are, again, globally recognized. It's not just a credential for the United States or for South America or for Africa or Australia or the Pacific region. I mean, it's globally recognized, and that's really what we try to focus on, not just for the design, but also for the installation.
Yep. Two things I want to circle back to real quickly, and I just want to make sure, and I want to put this out there. And the reason I want to put this out there is because I talk to a lot of people, being a trainer and traveling the country, I talk to a lot of people. And quite often, I hear BISCI sure does charge an awful lot of money for a nonprofit organization. Well, just because they're nonprofit doesn't mean they don't have a surplus. And you have to have a surplus in order to make sure that you still exist, because there's going to be lean years and good years, right? How would you, if I get asked that question in the future, what would you think would be a good way for me to explain to somebody? Because they get hung up in that whole nonprofit. And we both know that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What's a good way to respond to the person who says that or has that kind of a feeling?
That's a great question. So you have to have money to be able to reinvest into the programs that you're offering. And if you go look at the programs that we have between the data center side or ICT infrastructure side for, like the DD 102, outside plant, project management, the installation program, for us to be able to develop those programs, publish those documents and everything else. It does take money, and we don't make a profit. I mean, that's we're not a profitable organization that's out there to make money. We're out there to advance our industry, and we still have to have income coming in, and courses are expensive, but you also have to look at the time and effort it takes to develop one of those courses. I mean, it's hundreds of hours just to develop one of the courses. That's a 35-hour, 40-hour class. That you've got manuals that have to be published and developed. You've got the staff time for editing those and all. You've got all these individuals that are out there facilitating these courses. So there's a huge investment in that, and BISCI keeps reinvesting in itself to bring out new programs on a continual basis and update our programs. Our standards and everything have to be updated at a minimum of every 5 years, or they're not valid anymore. So not-for-profit doesn't mean that you're not making money. If you don't make money, you're going to not exist after a while. What it means is that you're taking that money and reinvesting it back into the organization to make more content and make things better for our.
Absolutely. And the second thing I want to roll back to is, because you mentioned that BISCI is a ANSI certified content creator. What about the standards? Now, I was talking to Tim Coleman in an interview earlier this week, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I think he said that BISCI does have representation in the NEC code panels. Is that true?
So BISCI, we don't have direct voting representation for the NEC. What we do have is an individual who sits on our standard side who does put in comments on any new content coming out in the NEC. So that's what we do. We go through and we comment as an organization changes that are upcoming to the NEC. If we feel that they're going to be detrimental to the ICT industry.
Perfect.
And then with our standards, again, we're ANSI. We have ANSI credentialed, or shouldn't say ANSI credentialed. ANSI recognizes us as a organization to publish standards based on their requirements for a standard to be published. So again, we publish those standards like the 002 2019 data center standard and the other standards that we have out there.
Do you know the number off the top of your head, how many publications you guys have?
Ooh, boy, I wish I'd had a number I could give you. I don't want to comment, because if I do, Clark or Jeff Silvera is going to get mad at me. Yeah, so we have our best practices manuals, our outside plant design reference manual. We've got the telecommunications distribution methods manual, the award-winning telecommunications distribution methods manual. We've got our telecommunications project methods manual. We have those are the ITSM, the ITS installation methods manual for the installation program. And then we've got our standards, which go through 01 through I think 19. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the list of the standards that we have.
Cool. Yeah, you guys definitely put out a lot of publications. So now that we know who BISCI is and how you're reaching out to the community, what's a good career path for as far as somebody who's just getting in the industry and they're looking for some kind of a certification? Because certification means more money. Let's be honest, right?
Sure. So, here are all the community segments that are out there that are in the ICT industry. You've got commercial and residential infrastructure. You've got data center, both design and operations. We've got outside plant distribution, electronic safety and security, building automations, wireless, network infrastructure, telecommunications project management, and then installation and verification of technology systems. So when we look at career fields, typically a lot of people, especially if they're coming out of high school, are going to start out as an installer. And we have an actual program designed for them for credential. It's our BISCI Installer 1. It's a non-renewable certificate program. It's only valid for 3 years. And that allows those individuals to come into the field with absolutely no experience and be able to understand what ICT systems are and be able to do basic installation for an organization. And then once they've determined that, hey, this is the career field that I want to be in, then typically what they do is they move up to the Installer 2 or the Installer 2 Copper. This allows them, after a year of experience, to be able to go through and learn more about copper systems, more about testing and troubleshooting, more about shielded systems, which are becoming vitally important in some organizations because of EMI issues, especially when we look at our industrial environments that are out there. So that gives them another leg up, an advancement into the ICT industry. After that, they've got another couple years and at least a year working with fiber. They can move to the Installer 2 Fiber. That allows them to show that they know how to use an OTDR, how they know fusion splicing, terminating fiber with different types of connectors, and that gives them another advancement up into the field. Well, now that these individuals have been in the field 2, 3, 4, 5 years, everybody's different. It's not a race. The whole career field, a lot of people will say, well, this individual is moving faster than I am. It's not a race. You're only racing against yourself. Well, after that 3, 4, 5 years or however long it is, the next logical step is typically you're running crews or you're running teams of installers, and that would be where the BICSI technician falls in. You're going to be dealing with a little bit of project management. You're going to be dealing with how to set up your telecommunication spaces, a lot more on safety because you're managing crews, your pathways, all of those things kind of fall into the BICSI technician. So, but that's not the end. A lot of people think, well, I'm a tech, I'm going to stay in the field forever, and I'm going to be climbing a ladder, I'm going to be doing all that. No, that's one of the great things about what BICSI offers. We have a career path to potentially a 6-figure salary, and that's moving out of the technician field and moving into typically what the next thing is project management. That's usually where people fall into. And again, it's not where you have to go. Don't think that, that's the next place that you have to be, but a lot of people that are BICSI technicians, they move into project management. They're brought in the office so that they can manage larger projects. And the BICSI RTPM offers them the ability to get some actual training through the PM 102 class to understand how to properly manage projects, because project management's its own career field. It has its own way of doing things. It's not just punching down patch panels or terminating or splicing fiber. There are certain things that you have to be able to learn how to do to properly manage projects and not be a firefighter, which is what a lot of project managers, that's how they start out. Well, once you're a project manager, what you find is most of the projects that you manage, or a lot of them, the customer doesn't understand what their need is or their requirements. They don't have proper documentation or a design, or you get designs that are incomplete and you have to finish that design. So that really leads into the other design credentials that we have depending on what type of projects that you're working on. If you're working on your commercial ICT government type projects, then it's going to be the BICSI RCDD. That's the next logical step. You're going to move into that and you're going to start doing a lot more design work. If you're working with data centers, we have the DCDS, the data center design consultant. And then if you're dealing with outside plant, you're going to be looking at the OSP credential. If you're dealing with your pathways between your buildings on a commercial type campus or a military base, then the outside plant makes perfect sense to be able to pursue that. And it's not that you just get one. I mean, you can go after all of them. I mean, I've got all the design credentials myself because I've done work in all those industries and locations. So it's a career path, and it's not a race, but it gives you the opportunity to be able to advance and gain credentials, gain the knowledge, and show that you're actually capable of doing these jobs.
Very cool. Maybe you can help me with a question I just received an email the other day.
Sure.
This email came to me, I guess, as a result of one of my live streams. And I only know him as IG. That's the only thing he has in his email. But
okay.
Here's the email. So maybe help me respond for this guy. And hopefully he's listening. He says, Chuck, active duty installer here, looking for the next challenge in my career and not sure what to do next. I'm a BICSI certified technician, and I will be exiting the military in a few years. What advice would you give someone in my position?
Wow.
My wife said, if you win.
So he's former military. So there's a lot of organizations that are out there that are looking for former military ICT installers. If he has a security clearance, that's even a bigger bonus. So my suggestion is for him, depending on what his background is, if he's got quite a bit where he's running projects, he might want to look at doing project management. But I know how the military does a lot with their installers. They do a lot of design work as well. The RCDD might be a good choice for him. So he's really got kind of two open pathways, and depending on what he wants to do when he gets out of the military, does he want to stay more involved with the field work and things that are going on there? He might want to move into project management. If he wants to kind of step maybe a little bit away from the field work and do more design, then the RCDD would make a lot of sense for it.
Very cool. It's funny you keyed in on that security clearance, because that's one of the things I was going to point out to him is, if he has a security clearance, that's like the golden ticket right now. I mean, ever since 9/11, a lot of projects, especially for the federal government, require some level of security clearance. So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's a huge, that's like you said, the golden ticket.
Yep.
If you've got that, then having all the other things just makes it more valuable for your credentials that you hold.
Yeah, a company's more willing to invest in you to get your RTPM or your RCDD if you already have that security clearance, because you can't just, unlike the RCDD, you can't just go pay and take a class to get your security clearance. You have to have a sponsoring agency, and then there's an FBI background check, and there's got to be due cause to get a security clearance and stuff. So that's the hardest step of all. So if he's coming out with that security clearance, I'm one of the guys I'm mentoring. He just retired from the military, and he was when I was talking to him on the phone, he was almost like afraid of transitioning to the private sector. I was like, dude, you have the golden ticket. You're gonna have people chasing you down. Once they find out you have the clearance and you already had your. That's not this person, by the way. It's another person I'm mentoring. He has a BISCI. Actually, he has a BISCI technician certificate, and I think he's also a certified trainer, if I remember right, through BISCI as well. So, and I want to apologize if you hear my puppy in the background. She's in the other room.
It's okay.
That's the thing about working at home, right? She's over there. I put her away and I put her in a crate, but she's over there whining now. So, so let me ask you, so we're going through COVID times, right? Hopefully we're on the backside of COVID now. How have you adapted your training for COVID stuff?
Sure. So that's actually a great question. So when COVID happened last year, March timeframe, that pretty much shut everything down as far as training and all. You couldn't get people together in groups and do all that. So we actually pivoted quite rapidly and converted our classrooms into what we call virtual classroom training. So, the nice thing is with the social distancing issues, with people working from home, this kind of combines some of the best traits of in-person classes with the flexibility of a virtual classroom because you don't have to travel and go anywhere. So we use a platform. We send the invites out to the students and they log in, and it allows us to actually run our courses like our design classes or our installation classes virtually. So for our design classes, what we've done is we've taken all the prints and everything else, and we've actually converted them, and we use Microsoft Excel and Word and PowerPoint and converted all those things over into those documents so that students could actually participate in the classes, and we can break them out into their groups like we would do in a normal in-person class. And they can collaborate together by sharing their screen, and they can all work on their designs, or in the case of project management, their project, they can work on those things as a group and then come back and present it just like they would be doing in a normal classroom environment. For our installation program, what we've done is we've taken blocks and in some cases the tools necessary for the class, and we've boxed those up and we ship them to the students. So that when the students is taking like the Installer 1 class, they're getting a 66 block, they're getting a 110 block, they're getting cable, 25 pair and Cat5, they're getting a coax cable, they're getting F connectors and all these things. Now they of course have to provide some of their own hand tools, but if they're coming into this industry, they're probably going to have these tools anyways. They're going to have a 110 tool and a 66 tool. They're going to have a compression tool for being able to do the F connectors. So we ship all those things to the students, and then as they're going through the class with their web cameras, they're actually able to hold these things up, the jacks and all, and show that they've terminated them and terminate them correctly. And then the instructors can give feedback. Same thing for the Installer 2 copper class. We're sending out gigabits blocks, and we're sending out shielded jacks, Cat6A cable, shielded Cat6A cable, and all these things that are required for the class, a 210 block. So they have to go through and actually terminate these and show those to the instructor that they've done them correctly. So we've managed to pivot those classes, all of our design classes virtually, and our Installer 1 and our Installer 2 copper class virtually. Unfortunately, due to the equipment requirements for the fiber class and the technician class, we really couldn't pivot those to a virtual environment because we can't ship a fusion splicer out to every student. We can't ship, a termination kit out to every student. It would be very expensive and cost prohibitive. Plus, we would have the risk of those equipment not being returned to us possibly. So that's kind of where we are with our virtual classes. And I've taught our PM class and the data center class virtually, and I have to say that it works out really well. I mean, it's not the same as an in-person class, but nothing virtual ever is. But it does give the students the ability to work together and learn from each other as well from the instructor.
Yeah, the more senses you can incorporate into the learning process, the better chance you have of retention. That's why I've always preferred face-to-face classes. But there are some people that absolutely thrive in a virtual class environment. There's that segment, absolutely. Are you going to keep these changes post-COVID?
So right now, everything in the air is up with COVID. You know, nobody knows. CDC released new guidelines. Everybody's still trying to figure out what that means. We still teach our IN 250 and our TE 350 classes in Tampa. We have since earlier this year, late last year, early this year, we started bringing students in, social distancing, limiting the class size, doing all those things so that we could still run those courses. What the future holds at this point, I'm not really certain. Right now, through the next several months, we're still running VCT classes. That's probably going to continue for a little while longer. Again, it's really going to depend on what COVID and what the guidance is going to be from the CDC and other organizations and how travel is going to happen. So, stay tuned. Visit the BISCI website. When classes open up and they're going to be in person, they're going to be listed on there. Otherwise, we've got the virtual option, at least for the near future.
So that talks about the class part. How do you handle the exam portion of the certification?
Sure. So for all of our design classes, for the last several years, individuals, once they want to take an exam, they have to apply to the credentialing department at BISCI. They go online, you fill out your application now, and it's the same for the installation. Everything is online. You complete the application, and then you'll be given a application approval and a notice that you can actually go take your exam. And then you'll go to the Pearson VUE website, and you'll have a code that you'll put in, and you'll pick a date and a location for a Pearson VUE facility to take the written exam. For the installation classes, it's a little bit different. For the installation classes, there's a hands-on portion that has to be completed. So you'll go through the class. You still have to complete your application online. You'll tell them what class that you're going to take or what time you want to take a hands-on exam. And you'll go through, you'll take your hands-on exam, which again, you'll have to have a camera. You can't have anything in the room. It's much like any kind of proctored virtual test. You go through and they'll have to complete the tasks that are assigned to each course level for the 101 and the installer 1 and the installer 2 copper. Once that's done, then they have the option. They'll be given a little ticket. We call it the golden ticket. They're given that information. They go to Pearson VUE, and again, they can schedule their exam to go take their written exam at a Pearson VUE testing facility. The nice thing about the Pearson VUE is they have an option where you can actually do it virtually. So for those locations here in the United States where things were closed down, the Pearson VUE facilities weren't open, then they would actually have a virtual proctor come on. They would do the test through your computer and be able to let you take your DCDS, your RCDD exam, or one of the other exams, or your installer 1 or your installer 2 copper exam virtually.
Tôi vừa hoàn thành một hệ thống có thể lấy ý.
You guys still do the exams there at BISCI headquarters?
So we do not. We stopped doing written exams at the headquarters a couple years ago. We moved entirely over to Pearson VUE for the testing. It's one of those things as far as being able to meet certain guidelines for your credentialing programs is to try to remove that testing component away from where instructors could potentially be at. So that's one of the reasons why that kind of moved off. And it adds some credence to our program that, we're not out there just pushing people through to get tests. I mean, we're out there, our credentialing programs, we're trying to make sure are top notch, that individuals that are out there, they are not something that's, an organization that's just running people through and giving them a sheet of paper. You have to really earn these credentials.
And that's the big thing is we found that, in delivering classes, because, most manufacturers, when they have their warranty programs, they have what I call their pizza diploma program, right? So you know exactly what I'm talking about just from your response. And for those who may not know what that means it means somebody from the manufacturer come out and say, look, here's our new jacks. Here's our new cable. Thank you for coming. There's a pizza in the back, right? And that's why I love the BICSI programs, because they're not pizza diploma programs. They are good, solid content. And when you get done, you're going to feel like you ran through the bushes and you've earned that certificate. It's not just given to you. Not just given to you.
Well, I always tell people, it's like drinking from a fire hose, and you try to retain the best that you can. But one of the things that, as an ICT person, and I've been in the career for 28 years, you always are going to learn, as long as you keep learning, because some of the things that like I'll never probably see a Twin-X cable again in my life. I know how to terminate one. I know how to test it. I know how to set up token ring networks. That knowledge is no longer valid. I mean, that's gone. Now you need to learn about how to terminate and set up for 40 gig networks, 100 gig networks. I mean, it's the technology's changed. So the nice thing about our industry is, if you like to learn, which I do, it's a great industry to be in because it's ever changing. Something new is happening all the time.
Yeah, the best you could be is a constant learner in this industry, and I strive to learn 2 new things every day, and it helps keeps me fresh and stuff. That's why I started the TDMM study group, because I realized I passed my RCDD on the 8th edition, and I haven't really touched that book since I passed my RCDD. So I was like, some things have changed. So that's why I started reading. I was like, I'll do better with this if I have a group that holds me accountable. That's why we created the whole group, and we just get together once a week. And that's the first thing we always ask: did you get your reading done?
That's a lot of reading.
And it does force you, it does motivate you to do your reading when you guys get in front of a bunch of people and say, no, I didn't do my reading. So it helps hold you accountable. A while back, I heard this thing called Project Refresh, where you redid your classrooms. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So a couple years ago, we went through and we changed up our classrooms. The BICSI headquarters was getting a little dated, and we wanted to incorporate some new things into our facility, some new AV, some new technology, advance where we were. So we went through and we actually redesigned our classrooms. And this is actually one of the BICSI classrooms right here. This is Classroom C in our Tampa headquarters. And if you take a look, we've got our table set up here, and we've got all of our racks. One of the big changes that we made was our previous classrooms basically were built out like 2 TRs. You had a bunch of blocks and everything in one location, and then the same thing duplicated in another part of the classroom. So that was great for showing kind of how a TR laid out, but it didn't really help students because they kind of got in each other's way. You can only put so many people in front of a wall field. So what we did was we decided that we would separate it out, and we would build individual workstations for the students so that as they go through, they could learn how to properly route and terminate cables, properly terminate jacks, do the labeling, properly terminate on racks and all. So if you notice here, we have actual 16 individual workstations in each one of the classrooms. And we have a 66 block, we have an LSA style block, we've got a BICS frame here, we've got a 110 frame, then we've got a 210 frame, and then we've got a gigabix block, as well as a single panel fiber housing at the top. And then we have our racks on here where we've actually got our patch panels, both for shielded and your standard Cat5e, your 6, and then your 6A shielded over on here. And then each one of the workstations, if you notice, you come down, it's kind of hard to see here, every other workstation in between them, we have actual outlets that are run up through conduit through a properly sized pull box. And then they pull these over from the individual work outlets, and they drop them into the basket tray where they route them over and they terminate them in the proper locations on the racks. So this gives the students not only the ability to work together because they've got to share and pull their 2 cables for their jacks, but they also have their own individual work areas where they've got to terminate their cable, both their multi-pair cable and their individual 4-pair cables on different types of outlets based on the class level that they're taking.
Đây là giường ngủ đa năng.
So, as you know, as we talked about earlier, I did take my instructor class there. It's changed a lot. I like the way it looks. I like the way
a whole lot.
Yeah.
So all of the lighting in the classroom is PoE. All these high bay lights are PoE. They actually have 2 5E cables that are going to them for powering PoE, and they all run to this consolidation point that's located up in the ceiling. And that's another great example because a lot of students, they hear about consolidation points, but they've never seen one. So here's a properly designed and installed consolidation point for the PoE lighting, which goes back to our telecommunications room where the PoE switches are located at. This allows us, if we wanted to do moves, adds, and changes with the high bay lights, we wouldn't have to go all the way back to the TR. We could just change out the routing for the cables right here to the actual consolidation point that's at the top. We've got AV that's listed in the room. There's actually 2 projectors that are in the room. You can see one of them right here. There's one of them further to the left. Our outlets here on the desk allows us to connect to a PC that's located in the TR to display the presentation. You can also hook a laptop up and you can split the screen so you can show something on one screen, something else on the other screen. We've got an amazing high zoom camera that's actually located above this desk that allows the instructors to zoom in, and if they're terminating outlets on the desk, they can actually zoom in, and that allows the entire class to be able to see what's going on without having to crowd around a single instructor. And everybody's kind of jostling to be able to see what's going on. It allows them to present that. Especially useful when somebody's showing fiber, because fiber's so small. So you can throw a fusion splicer up there and you can actually show all the steps with fusion splicing, or if you're doing the cleave and crimp or the epoxy polish type method, you can actually show that really well. And
I remember when I took my trainer class, and when you take the trainer class, the first week they teach you the class, right? The installer, actually back then it was installer 1, installer 2, and technician, but now it's installer copper, installer fiber. And then the second week, they divided the class up, and then you had to teach portions of that class back to the class and to the instructor. I don't know if that's still the same way or not, but so one of the ones I got assigned was 66 blocks. And I remember vividly sitting there teaching people how to use 66 blocks, and you're exactly right. They were all crowded around me and looking over top of me, and it didn't feel comfortable as an instructor. So I really like that Zoom camera thing. Because I do a lot of classes virtually, I might have to talk to my wife and have her green light me buying another camera to mount directly above me.
Yeah, it works really well. I mean, it zooms in well enough that you can see the hairs on the back of your hand. I mean,
Wow.
it's amazing how the clarity and detail. I mean, it's an HD camera, and it has a very high zoom on it. So again, I mean, it's one of those things that when we looked at what are the things that we can do to enhance the students' learning experience in the classroom, and that was one of the things that we'd settled on. We've got in the classroom as well, we have the speaker systems that are in there so that students can hear when we play videos and all that, because our classes have become not the death by PowerPoint that many classes that you'll sit through and you're like, oh, great, another slide. But we have videos and activities and pictures that are included in that content so that students can actually see what they're learning about, not necessarily just seeing some words written up on a screen. Okay, core and cladding. Yeah, okay, that's some things that are on a fiber, but actually see what that is so they can understand how that actually works and operates, especially for individuals who aren't new to the industry. I mean, or who are new to the industry or who don't understand concepts. Pictures explain a whole lot more than words do.
I agree 100%. And for those, kind of doing a callback to our conversation earlier, and for those who gripe and moan about BISCI being a nonprofit, there's your money right there. There's your money. A high zoom camera, not cheap. Having to retrofit a classroom like this to put conduit in the concrete floor, not cheap. All this equipment, even though some of it gets donated, you still have to assemble, you still have to put it together. It all costs money. That's the money going back in right there. So I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. And that's why you'll always hear me talk good about BISCI and always talk, always put them in a good light, because I think for our industry, they've done a lot for us. I really do.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to come to work for BISCI was to give back to the industry. I mean, the ICT industry has been fantastic to me over the years, and being able to be hired as an instructor and give back to students and be able to share knowledge and learn. I mean, I can't say that I've ever had a class that I didn't learn things from the students and learn from their experiences and the things that they've done. But being able to give knowledge and be able to assist with, like the project refresh here and the things that we did and all the other documents and things that we put out, the publications and the standards. It's just great to be able to participate in that, which kind of leads me into segueing into one thing. We are an association, and we have committees, and we are always looking for people on those committees. So if you're interested in, if your viewers are interested in any of these committees, I would highly recommend to reach out. We are an association. We are run by our committees, and these committees are the ones that actually help. BISCI Cares oversees our charitable endeavors that we do. If you've ever been to a BISCI conference and seen where we give money out to worthy causes, and these are not causes that typically are well known. These are causes that have budgets that usually are far less than the money that we donate to them, and that's really what's important. Is we're trying to help others that are just outside of our industry. Our ethics committee that we've got, they administer the standards of conduct and code of ethics that we have, so that we can enhance the professional value of our BISCI members and those holding our BISCI credentials. The Registration and Credentialing Supervision Committee is there to develop, maintain, and oversee all of BISCI's professional and occupational registration and certification programs that we've got. We want to make sure they're globally recognized, and we have great efficacy for our program. We have our standards program. This is where our standards are developed, and individuals get together, that the experts that are in the field or people who have the experience in the field get together and create our standards. We have the Technical Information and Methods Committee. Those are the group that's responsible for writing and updating our BISCI design and installation technical manuals. So our best practices on there. So we get our subject matter experts that they come in and they are given tasks in the areas that they are subject matter experts, and they provide content for these documents. And then we have our professional development department, and that's got 4 working groups that are in there. That's the Future Educational and Needs and Trends Committee, or group, I should say, the Emerging Professionals and Students Group, Cabling Skills Challenge, and Women in BISCI. That's the group that helps advance our industry through the professional credentials that we have, or our organization. So highly recommend, don't just come and get a credential and walk away, but do like everybody else is, that if you really care about our industry, you need to give back to it. So it's a great idea to go through and join one of these committees, give back to the organization and to the ICT community that's out there, so that we can advance it, because that's the only way we're going to be able to advance our industry and make sure that everybody is doing things the way it should be done.
Yeah, when I see, because I'm on LinkedIn quite often, because that's one of the platforms I use to put my stuff out there. Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to put up my acronym challenge today. Dang it. Sorry, guys. I'll get it out this afternoon, I promise. So when I see people post that they got their RCDD, I always tell them congratulations, but I always challenge them. How are you going to give back now? Because, you do have to give back to the industry. And that's the whole reason I started this podcast, is to give back to the industry that treated me so well. The same reason you're doing what you're doing as well. So, and the hardest part about doing volunteer work with BISCI committees is starting it, just getting up the courage to send out the email, because I've participated in several. They do conference calls. You don't have to fly and stay at the conferences. I mean, they do them via conference call. You just call in and you listen, and they email back and forth. They make it really easy to participate, really easy, and you get to meet some really cool people. You get a more broader perspective of our industry, because you might be meeting with another manufacturer, you might be meeting with a competitor, you might be meeting with a customer, and they bring their viewpoints to that committee, which I think expands it and makes the content even better. So
it's the networking. I mean, just the networking and being able to meet different people from, not just in the United States, but different cultures, different places, and understand how things are different globally. And, you never know, you might have a project in sub-Saharan Africa that you need to find somebody to do, or Australia or somewhere else, or, even here in the United States, if you got a project on the other side of the country, just the networking alone allow you to find somebody that that you can have a relationship with, and possibly get their feedback or send them work and they send you work. I mean, the networking opportunities are fantastic. So committees are great. Just if you want to give back to the industry, I would highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love the BISCI conferences, because you get the network and stuff like that as well. I think the Vegas one's going to be a hybrid, right? It's going to be part virtual, part in real in face-to-face, I think?
That is correct. So it's supposed to be, they're going to have both the in-person, which they'll have the normal sessions that are going to happen there, and then they're going to have the virtual conference, much like what we had for the winter conference and the previous fall conference, where there'll be an online portion for that.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate your time, Christopher. If somebody wants to reach out and learn more, what's the best way for them to find out more about BICSI and their programs?
So the best way to find out about the programs is go to our website, which is BICSI.org. If you go to that website, you can find everything out about our organization. You can learn about the credentialing programs that we have. You can learn about the educational programs we have. If you want to look at the standards and the best practices manuals and potentially order those, you can do that from our website. If you want to join one of the committees, it's on our website. Everything is there that you could possibly need to find out about BICSI and participate.
Very good. Well, I appreciate your time, and it was a pleasure having you on the show. It's finally good to get to meet you face to face, and I promise the next conference you come up to me, I will remember you.
That's okay. Like I said, with the beard, it's been a little bit different, but now most of the people that know me know that I have a beard. I've had it for about 3 years now, so I think I'm going to shave it off, then they won't recognize me again.
Yeah, you do meet a lot of people at conferences. I have people come up to me all the time, and just after a while, it's a streamline of faces. It really is. Well, thanks again, Christopher, and I hope we have another interview soon and another subject matter.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
All right, take care.
Ờ, nãy giờ mình nói chuyện nãy giờ 5 phút mà mình quên mở cái micro để thu âm lại. Xin lỗi với các bạn, nó bị mất cái âm thanh cho nên là mình mới ngó qua cho em quên mở micro. Thì ok, hồi nãy là cái clip hồi nãy khá dài đến 50 phút lận. Thì giới thiệu BISCI là ai, BISCI là gì, những từ tiếng Anh trên đó rất là dễ đúng không các bạn? Chúng ta thể nghe, có thể chụp hình lại, chúng ta gửi dùng Google dịch, Google AI, Gemini hay là GPT nó dịch ra là những cái thông tin ở trên cái buổi trình chiếu hồi nãy, rất là dễ mà, mới từ rất là dễ. Thì nó ví dụ như bây giờ, chờ xíu các bạn, chờ xíu nha. Thì bây giờ ví dụ như là hồi nãy họ nói BISCI là ai đó, BISCI thành lập năm bao nhiêu, ở đâu, rồi các lớp học thuật của họ mình gọi là học thuật, thì các bạn có thể là dịch sang một cái từ khác mà đối với mình nó gọi là học thuật, học sâu hơn. Nên chúng ta bấm cấp mạng bình thường chúng ta chỉ biết nó bình thường thôi, còn muốn tìm hiểu sâu hơn nữa chúng ta phải vô như lớp học thuật. Từ nó chắc các bạn, một số bạn sẽ khó nghe ha, khó hiểu hơn. Thì hồi nãy là nó họ chia sẻ là lộ trình về học thuật của BISCI, giới thiệu như cái lớp DD 102, DC 102, OSB 102 là gì, lớp IN 101, 225 là gì đó. Chúng ta học từng bước lên, rồi chúng ta học đi thi LCD, DCDS, ví dụ chúng ta học từng bước lên thì nó sẽ tốt hơn cho những cái lớp vừa rồi, cho lớp của BISCI đang đào tạo. Cái giá trị khi chúng ta học cái BISCI, chúng ta làm việc cho nó sẽ trôi chảy hơn, mình hay gọi là smooth hơn, tốt hơn cho chúng ta, cái mindset tốt hơn, suy nghĩ tốt hơn. Và cái đặc biệt là cái bằng cấp của BISCI được công nhận toàn cầu như các bạn, chứ không phải là chỉ có ở trong nước Việt Nam, hoặc là không chỉ có ở Singapore, không chỉ có ở Malaysia, không chỉ có ở Mỹ, mà được công nhận toàn cầu nha các bạn. Đó, cho nên khi bạn học, các bạn làm, các bạn có thể xin được làm một bất kỳ triển khai hoặc triển khai hệ thống cáp mạng viễn thông cho tất cả mọi nơi trên thế giới, bằng cấp có giá trị toàn cầu trên thế giới. Hoặc các bạn có thể đi dạy, nếu mà các bạn thi sau khi học xong, các bạn thi theo một chứng chỉ đó là trainer, là người đào tạo do BISCI ủy quyền, thì các bạn vừa làm, các bạn có thể dạy lại, mở cái lớp, xin phép mở cái lớp tại nơi sở tại của bạn, tức là nơi ở của bạn, một công ty của bạn, để các bạn đào tạo lại, chia sẻ lại một cái chính danh cho những các anh chị, các bạn cùng lứa tuổi các bạn còn nhỏ hơn để hiểu về BISCI hơn ha. Ok, các bạn có thể tìm hiểu thêm BISCI tại trang web bisci.org. Còn nếu các bạn không hiểu thêm, các bạn có thể viết mail cho mình hoặc bình luận bên dưới cho mình. Thì bây giờ mình sẽ mở clip nữa, rồi sau chúng ta sẽ tạm dừng cái chuyện nghề này. Thì cái clip này nói về cái tiêu chuẩn thiết kế ở trung tâm dữ liệu ở quyển sách 002/2019 là phiên bản năm 2019. Và clip này do chính BISCI upload ở trên trang web của chính họ, trên kênh YouTube họ. Ok, mình sẽ mời cho các bạn coi nhé.
Thank you and welcome to the seminar. I certainly appreciate your time. My intent is to present the BISCI Data Center Design Standard and a design scenario in order for you to decide whether or not the 002 2019 standard will be a good design tool for you. Here's a bit more background on myself as it relates to this seminar. As mentioned, I've been an RCDD and a BISCI member since 1995. Up until 1999, I had experience in the data center environment as both a technician and a project manager. In 1999, I became a full-time telecommunications designer and designed my first data center. That facility, I'm happy to report, is still in production. I visited a couple of years ago. Of course, almost everything in it has changed. During that visit, I was reminded of our struggle during the design process to determine exactly what would be the best solution for the client. Of course, 20 years ago seems like 1,000 years in the data center world. At that time, the goal often seemed to be to provide a big cold white room with a lot of electrical plugs. In retrospect, I wish that the BISCI data center design standard had been available at that time. It certainly would have made the process much easier, much more efficient, and well, it would have improved the outcome. Use of the 002 standard as a design tool, really a set of tools, by means of today's scenario is what today's presentation goal is. Let me mention that, although I'm a BISCI employee, this web seminar is compromised mostly my experiences and opinions. It does not necessarily represent BISCI approved content. In the hour that we have, it's impossible to deeply and comprehensively examine the content in the BISCI Data Center Design Standard. As part of my job at BISCI, I teach the DC 102 class, which is a week-long data center design course based on the 002 2019 standard. If you are interested in learning about the BISCI Data Center Design Standard, I invite you to take a look at the course. We have successfully migrated the course to a real-time virtual classroom training offering during this pandemic, and students report great success in learning the content of the BISCI 002 2019 Data Center Standard. The course not only examines the standard's content, but also allows attendees to do numerous design activities together in design teams. It's a 5-day, Monday through Friday, online course, and you can find more information on BISCI's website under Education and Certification tab. The release of the ANSI BISCI 002 2019 Data Center Design and Implementation Best Practices Standards is the 4th edition. The first edition was published in 2010. I would be remiss in not mentioning that 2 other documents were released with this most recent 002 standard. Briefly, they are the BISCI 009 2019 Data Center Operations and Maintenance Best Practices. This is for running a data center. The other document is Essentials of Data Center Projects First Edition. This, quote, contains a holistic view of the data center, overall data center project from conceptualization to planning, implementation, and project closeout. Before we get into the design scenario, I'd like to go over some of the initial information from the standard. I think this will be helpful for you to decide whether or not the standard would be a useful tool in your design arsenal. In the 002 standard, right on page 1, it states the standard provides a reference of common terminology and design practice, and that the standard is not intended to be an architect and engineer sole reference or a step-by-step design guide, but may be used to determine design requirements in conjunction with a data center owner, occupant, or consultant. This is typical of industry standards. They aren't intended to be a step-by-step guide, but a collection of tools that we can use to provide our clients with the best solutions. On page 2, section 1.3, which is categories of criteria, the standard states that there are 2 categories of criteria. The first is mandatory, and the second is advisory. The mandatory requirements are our shalls. The advisory or desirable criteria are designated by the word should or similar terms. I think it's important for designers to verify that our clients understand the differences between requirements and recommendations, our shalls and shoulds, and how this applies to various content found in the standard. Our scenario will show some of the differences. Also on page 2, there's a very brief scope section that mentions that the BISCI 002 standards complements other national and global standards. All good standards function this way. So let's jump in the scenario and see how we can use a 002 standard in determining the client's requirements and delivering a standards compliant design. This is sometimes the most difficult part of the design process. Some of my clients are data center owners, Some clients are eager to design and build a new data center, but many of my clients view the data center as a necessary evil that complements and helps their core business, which is not in the data center industry. I have a guest speaker today. My guest speaker will play the role of the data center owner, our client, in the design scenario. So let me introduce the guest speaker. Welcome, and thank you, Dr. McCain. She really is a PhD doctor, a doctor of psychology.
Hello, and you can call me Victoria.
Thanks. I can tell you're going to be a sweetheart client.
You knew that in advance.
Good point. An advantage of the coronavirus work from home situation is that I could persuade Victoria to play the part of a client that is not involved in the data center business. This could represent a type of client many of us design for. Also, I think it's more interesting for you to hear another voice. We're going to use the following design scenario to show just a small part of the information and tools in the 002 design standard. We will start the conversation about designing Dr. McCain's data center for her agency. This agency consists of multiple healthcare facilities spread over several states, offering outpatient and non-surgical settings. The data center will be owned and operated by her organization.
Do I have any other choices besides ownership?
Yes, there are data center outsourcing models.
Is that explained in your design standard?
Yes, it starts in Appendix D on page 477.
We were just on page 2. You skip around a lot.
It's the nature of how standards work.
Good point. What are some of the outsourcing models?
The standard briefly describes managed services model, co-location services model, and several others. I'll show you a decision tree in the standard.
Okay, but we're not going to use any of those.
Not today, but this leads us into a discussion about commissioning at the start of the design process.
I thought commissioning was something at the end of the project.
That's a common belief, but the standard has a commissioning section and it clearly defines roles and responsibilities starting with the pre-design phase of the project.
Can you talk about this phase?
Yep, it's called the program phase, and it establishes the foundation for the other phases and determines the scope of work and the systems to be commissioned. The objectives are called out in the standard. Some of the objectives are establishing the design intent and establishing the project owner's requirements. These are often called BOD and OPR for basis of design and owner's project requirements. We are, of course, limited for time, and commissioning would take many hours to explore, even on a superficial basis. I'll show a couple of screenshots which illustrate some small portions of the robust content about commissioning in the 002 standard. Commissioning is possibly the most important set of processes that ensure operational compliance and project success. And it should start from the first day. Then the standard describes the other phases in a flow chart, which we see on screen. There are individual flow charts for each phase. I'll show you one. This is for pre-design and it's the simplest one. So we'll walk through it. First, on the left is establishing the commissioning team. CX stands for commissioning. The standard also gives a detailed table of commissioning documentation. This table lists the document, who would require the document, who issues it, and who is responsible for approval and revision, and finally, who uses the document. I'm showing a very small part of the table on screen.
That looks like it would be helpful. Could one use it as a checklist?
That's a great question.
Well, you did write it.
Good point. Yes, and that's something I talk about in the DC 102 class. Much of the 002 standard can be transformed into checklist and processes if this is something a designer uses.
Who wouldn't use it?
Well, you know how people are.
Yes, I am a psychologist.
Back to our design scenario. In my opinion, some of the best tools in the standard involve setting target goals and expectations of the project. Let's explore some of these. We need to establish the availability class of your data center.
What is availability class?
Descriptions of availability classes are found throughout the standard, but a good place to start is in Appendix B, which is called Reliability and Availability.
That sounds redundant.
Yes, it does, but the standard describes them as different concepts. Availability is designed as a probability that a component or system is in a condition to perform its intended function. Reliability is a probability that a component or a system will perform as intended over a given time period.
Can you give me an example? I'm a healthcare provider, not a nerd.
Let's compare two components. One component breaks once a year and takes 9 hours to restore its function. Another component breaks 3 times a year and it takes 3 hours to restore its function each time. Which is more available? Which is more reliable?
You're asking me?
You bet.
Well, they're both available 8,751 hours of the year.
Whoa, you're not a nerd?
I'm really kind of an actor right now.
Good point. So these components are equally available. Are they equally reliable?
Doesn't really seem so.
Yes, that's correct. One breaks down more. In other words, the time between failure is shorter, so that one is less reliable.
Let me guess, you have a way of calculating this?
Yes, and it starts on page 463 under Reliability Aspects of Availability Planning. And if you come to my DC 102 class, you get to make reliability calculations using the exponential function, also called Euler's number.
Unimaginable fun.
It's pretty fun, except maybe those 5 minutes. So back to your question. The standard describes 5 separate data center availability classes. Each class is defined in terms of 4 areas of concern. Those 4 are component redundancy, system redundancy, quality, and survivability. The classes are numbered 0 through 4. Once the availability class is determined, we can use this for subsequent design decisions. We're guided by the capability of the targeted availability class. Each of the major systems in a data center is described by the appropriate availability class. Examples are telecommunications infrastructure, network, electrical, and mechanical or cooling, and there are others too. Let's get back to the overall classes of the data center and how to determine them. We said we needed a target to aim at. Let's figure out what that is. Per the 002 design manual, this is a 3-step process. So let's walk through it in this scenario. The 3 steps quantify 3 factors. The factors are operational requirements, operational availability, and impact of downtime. For the first step, we will determine with the data center owner the operational requirements. Operational requirements describe the time available for planned maintenance shutdown. So the first question is, how much time is acceptable to take your data center offline for maintenance? We'll look at that in number of hours per year.
I thought data centers never shut down.
That's a common belief, and it's an achievable goal, but it'll take a great deal of both capital expenditure as well as operating expenses.
We would like to keep the costs down.
Let me ask you a couple of questions that may add context. Since a data center will be serving non-surgical outpatient facilities, could it be out of service, say, early on a Sunday for a few hours? Would that negatively impact your mission?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, that would be fine. We're not open for business at that time, and nor do we need access to records.
So would this be acceptable once a year, once a month, once a week?
It doesn't really matter. Once a week would be okay.
Well, to put this in definable numbers, say we allocated 4 hours per Sunday. That would be approximately 200 hours per year. Let's see what this represents as your data center's operational level. We can see in the second column that your data center fits in the operational level 1. The 200 hours are between 100 and 400 hours. The description is, quote, functions are operational less than 24 hours a day and less than 7 days a week. Scheduled maintenance downtime is available during working hours and off hours. Is that a good description?
We prefer not to shut down during working hours.
Okay, understand. That preference will put you in operational level 3 instead of 1. So we may have to go through this more than once. Data center design, and usually all designs, are a balance of what we want, what we need, and what we can afford. That was the first of the 3-step process. Let's move to step 2 in determining availability class. This step combines step 1 with a maximum annual downtime. This is unplanned interruption of service. Step 1 was planned downtime. At this point, we are starting to do risk assessment. We are balancing the benefit of the data center being in service with the consequence of being out of service. This varies widely between data center owners and the mission of the data center. Step 2 is a determination of the operational availability rating.
I bet you have some questions for me.
You catch on quick.
I am a doctor.
Good point. Here's my question. How much outage can you tolerate? The standard describes this as weighing the cost of downtime versus the cost of mitigating risk and achieving high availability. We will look at this in minutes per year versus the hours per year we talked about in step 1.
Minutes for the whole year?
Yes, minutes for the whole year.
That's a tough question. This data center serves many offices. Each office will have several patients at any one time, so I can't really say.
You have to come up with something. This is your data center.
Hey, I'm the client here.
Well, only until the end of the presentation.
Good point. In a real-world situation, I would prefer no more than 30 minutes per year. We could tolerate that.
In looking at the table, the intersection of operational level 1 with the 30 minutes of annual downtime gives us the operational availability rating of 2. And remember, we spoke about whether or not to have step 1, the operational level, possibly be level 3. On that chart, that intersection puts us at operational availability rating of 3 instead of 2. We'll look at that again in a minute. Now we've moved to the third and the last step. This is classifying the impact of downtime on the mission.
More questions?
Absolutely. We need to determine one of 5 classifications. The classifications describe the impact of unplanned downtime on your data center's mission. These are isolated, minor, major, severe, and catastrophic. The first 2 classifications describe the impact as being local in scope. I don't think these apply because your data center is supporting many offices that are spread over several states.
I agree.
The next classification, which is major, is described as regional in scope, affecting a portion of the enterprise, although not in its entirety, or resulting in moderate disruption or delay in achieving key organizational objectives.
I'm not sure if this applies because a data center outage would affect the whole organization, not just a portion.
Let's keep that in mind. But the second clause of the description does speak about a moderate disruption or delay. Let's look at the next one. Severe is described as multi-regional in scope, affecting a major portion of the enterprise, although not its entirety, or resulting in a major disruption or delay in achieving key organizational objectives.
That might be the best choice for us because even a short outage could cause us to do rescheduling and possibly a long-term loss of income.
Okay, the last one is catastrophic, which is described as affecting the quality of service delivery across the entire enterprise or resulting in significant disruption or delay in achieving key organizational objectives.
The first part of the catastrophic description applies because it will affect the entire organization, but I don't think it will be as significant a disruption as is described here. I'll choose the classification of severe.
So here's the last table in the process, and we see that the intersection of operational availability rating column of 2 with the severe row is class 3. We also spoke about the possibility of choosing availability rating of 3. Per this table, the intersection of availability rating of 3 with the impact of downtime classification of severe also results in the determination of class 3.
So our design target availability is class 3?
Yes, correct.
What exactly does this mean?
The availability class determination will guide us through the design capabilities and the redundancy requirements of all major systems and most subsystems. These capabilities and redundancy requirements are specifically described in the standard. In a few minutes, we'll briefly touch on some of these. The availability class rating not only gives the data center designer consultant a target, but the rich information in the standard gives all of our design partners a roadmap to deliver a data center the client expects. The architect, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, plumbing engineer, and network engineer will all be guided by the requirements, as well as the recommendations clearly set out in the standard. The way availability class applies to the various systems is focused and unique to each system. But we'll look at the description found in the electrical section. These concepts apply universally. So in this case, F stands for facility. The designator will change by the system. For example, C will be for communications. The 5 classification electrical systems are class F0. It's a single path data center that meets the minimum requirements of the standard but doesn't meet the requirements of an F1 or higher. Class F1, single path data center. Class F2, single path data center with redundant components. Class F3, the concurrently maintainable and operable data center. And Class 4 is the fault-tolerant data center. As the number rises, the level of reliability increases. The classes are completely performance-related. Single path indicates single points of failure throughout the distribution. If anything fails, then it's very likely the data center will be offline. As redundancy increases, so does reliability. Class 3 indicates there's redundancy of major systems. When a system is offline for reasons of maintenance or failure, the data center will stay in production. The same describes Class 4, but when the system is offline, the data center will not become a single-path data center. This is the definition of fault-tolerant. The concept of availability classes are essential to using this standard, and I think it makes a designer's life much more efficient while delivering a quality design to the client. Now let's discuss the site selection of the data center.
Is this something you do in your class?
Yes, what a great question. Yes, we do.
What's the purpose of talking about site selection? What if the site has already been selected?
There are several purposes, most of which are applicable to a chosen site, as well as setting out parameters and searching for a new site. The second half of the section in the standards address evaluation of utility services. The introduction states, quote, "It is of utmost importance for the data center location to have access to reliable high power quality and high-speed telecommunications services, access to other services such as water, sewage, and other energy sources of conventional, such as natural gas, propane, and diesel, or renewable energy such as wind and solar must be taken into consideration."
Sure, that makes sense. You can't operate a data center without those utilities. What does the first half address?
The first part is evaluating the site, specifically using risk assessment of the proposed site.
Yes, we want to avoid risk.
Complete risk avoidance is impossible, but we wish to identify and analyze the threats to our proposed data center site.
Does the standard define risk?
Yes, the overall definition is risk as the product of the probability of occurrence of an event and its impact. There will be events with a very high impact on the operation of the data center, but often those events are unlikely to occur. An example is an airplane crashing into your data center. More common are events that are more probable to occur, but also have less impact.
Can you give examples of some of the events that are outlined in the standard?
Yes, this standard separates hazards into three groups. The first is natural hazards. Examples are geological, meteorological, and biological.
Biological. Would that include COVID-19?
Yes, exactly. I'd like to point out, if this was an actual design meeting...
Actual as in, I get paid for this?
Easy now. If this was actual, you would be paying me for this.
Good point.
Anyway, if this was an actual design meeting, we would use a site selection risk assessment and evaluation in a subsequent meeting about the physical security of your data center, as well as using this information for disaster recovery planning.
What were the three groups again?
As mentioned, the first is natural hazards. The others are human-caused events and technology-caused events. Both of these last two address accidental events as well as intentional ones. Where are you planning on building your new data center? Have you chosen a site?
We haven't chosen a specific site. We would like it in or around Portland, Maine.
The standard requires, quote, the suitability of a site shall be determined by a site survey and evaluation and a risk analysis. We would do this for several reasons, including determining the suitability and safety of a site. The risk assessment we spoke about would not only help us evaluate risk, but also inform us of any risk mitigation strategies we may take. Also, this would help us gauge the level of risk tolerance your organization has.
Anything else?
Yes, and we'll review some examples, but I'd like to mention that the standard also includes cost evaluation recommendations, which covers one-time capital expenditures such as real estate, environmental studies, and the cost of adequate and redundant utility infrastructures. There are also costs associated with moves and relocation, as well as constructability issues such as permitting and build schedule. Finally, other costs such as reoccurring costs and intangible costs need to be evaluated, such as utilities, wages, and taxes.
That's pretty comprehensive.
I'm trying to tell you. So, some examples of natural hazards to evaluate the site are seismic and volcanic activity, wildfires, flooding, and wind. Others are ground stability, lightning, and air quality. The standards give recommendation for all of these. So next are human-made hazards. I'll show you part of the table in the section. This is a table of recommended distances for a variety of facilities. It should be noted that these are recommendations and not requirements. If the data center doesn't meet the recommendation, the design team should assess and determine various methods of mitigation strategies that address the risk. Site selection in BISCI 002-2019 standard is a differentiator. Other data center standards either do not address this or only spend a couple of pages on site selection. So, is this important? Do you participate in this type of analysis for your client? Does the architect do it? Do you think omitting this provides value to your client? If you think this will help your client, some tools for standards compliant design are there for you. So what do you think, honey?
Do you call all your clients honey?
No, only those that deserve it.
Good point.
So let's take a look at some of the other sections in the standards in the time that we have left, so you can get an idea of what is in the standard and help decide if the 002-2019 standard will help your design career and your clients. Modules 6 and 7 are space planning and architectural. I was fortunate enough to be employed by an architectural firm as a technology designer for over a decade. I worked for many other design firms before and after that job. Working with architects is a privilege, but unless a firm specializes in data center design, your knowledge will help them come up with a better solution and do it more efficiently too. Here's a quick overview. The space planning section begins with, quote, the capacity of a data center is based on the size of the computer room space and the capacity of the power and cooling systems per unit of computer room floor space. High-density data centers have a higher capacity of power and/or cooling per unit of computer room floor space. A couple of facility points are, and I'm summarizing, design for a defined load over a defined area. Consider future IT equipment platforms as well as current and any other unusual IT equipment. estimate change, scalability, and implementation phases, define budget, operational expenses, capital expenses, and total cost of ownership. The module provides a flow chart, part of which we see on screen, or alternatively, there's a 4-page checklist, again, part of which we see on screen, for space planning right after the flow chart. Architects love flow charts, as do many clients. I usually work with a checklist. Also, within the space planning section, there are a list of systems, subsystems, and components that should be included in the space planning analysis. For example, although there is a major section on electrical, the space planning section lists 3 places electrical distribution equipment will be found, including equipment typically installed in a dedicated electrical room outside the main computer area, equipment typically installed in the computer room spaces, and the third is equipment typically installed outside of the computer room.
I have a question for you.
Please go ahead.
Is the size of the space needed for the electrical equipment dependent on the size of the space needed for the data equipment?
It may be, but the standard warns us not to make that assumption. The standard points out that the space required for a power distribution system could be the same for a high-density computer room as well as one that's lower density. The most important factors are the required capacity and the level of redundancy. After space planning, the section examines data center support spaces with an emphasis on adjacencies. In other words, what needs to be next to each other. Finally, there's numerous pages on the design of the computer room, the white space, the very space that we're designing the whole facility to support. There are many requirements and recommendations in the computer room layout section. As a data center designer, I would survey your current information technology equipment and meet with your IT and network team about what will migrate into your new data center, as well as what new equipment will be added. We will determine the number of cabinets, both first day and last day, to install that equipment into. I know that you have data transport, processing, application servers, and data storage requirements, and we would begin electrical calculations based on this information. The electrical calculations will be used for mechanical requirements since power consumption produces heat. We will determine the capacity and the density of the cabinets as well as the entire computer room. With this information, we can start the design and layout of the computer room space. The standard gives requirements and recommendations about clearances, pathways for telecommunications, electrical components, and pathways for electrical conductors, pathways for mechanical systems, lighting, fire detection and suppression systems, bonding and grounding, and all other infrastructure required in a computer room. In the DC 102 class, we draw and design a computer room layout based on specific scope of work, and then we draw all the supporting spaces as team design activities. We focus on capacity and redundancy as well as the flow of equipment and personnel in the data center.
Now that sounds like fun. Challenging too.
It's cool. It really helps with conceptualizing the facility. I think it's an essential skill set for a data center designer. As mentioned, next is the architectural section. We won't go into this, but I want attendees to be aware that this information is included in the standard. Then we have the structural section. You can imagine that data centers have unique requirements for our structural engineering partners, as well as our electrical and mechanical engineers, which we'll speak about soon. This section calls out several design standards developed by the International Building Code, the Association of Civil Engineers, the Unified Facility Criteria, the UFC, which provides requirements for structures designed and constructed for the Department of Defense. The structural section addresses floor loading requirements, roof loads, seismic and wind considerations, as well as ice shard impact. This will be helpful for your Portland, Maine data center.
We do have winter.
Section 9 is the electrical systems. It's the longest section in the 002 standard, and we spent hours on this in the DC 102 class. In my opinion, this is an incredible amount of information that can help our electrical engineers in their design work. The standard states, quote, "This section will include references to other systems in this standard that, when considered and used together, will yield a strong, coordinated, and appropriate critical environment utility system." And Section 9 defines requirements solely as performance-based criteria. The purpose of such approach to defining availability classes is to uncouple them from electrical topologies and applications. Thus, to achieve a given class, a proposed design must conform to the normal, maintenance, and failure modes of operation. This provides system designers, owners, and equipment manufacturers sufficient latitude in selecting a design or a product without stifling innovation. All quotes from the manual. So unless an electrical engineer is a data center specialist, the EE will find a wealth of information here. The power consumption, density, and redundancy requirements of a data center is usually quite different than a typical electrical distribution design work. After extensive information on the requirements of the availability classes, including text, tables, and line drawings of many possible topologies, one of which we see on screen, there is information on utility planning, including a good checklist.
What is utility planning?
It's the consideration of electrical power services to our data center in this section.
From the electric company? You just tell them to hook you up, right?
Many times it's that easy. However, our engineers should do discovery and analysis. Some of the considerations are what types of other customers are on our electrical feed, can the power company deliver the required amount of power, what's the quality of the power, can the power company provide redundancy and feed diversity required, and many other issues.
Did we do any of this during the site selection phase?
Yeah, you catch on quickly.
You did say I was a honey of a client.
Good point. All of this shows the integrated design approach of the standard. We don't want to be deep in our design phase and find out there isn't adequate power service. The standard then presents descriptions, requirements, and recommendations of individual components and subsystems of data center electrical generation and distribution. To give you an idea of what is examined, here's a quick list. Generators, automatic transfer switches, main electrical switching, UPSs, upstream and downstream distribution boards, power distribution units, automatic static transfer switches, intelligent power strips, remote power panels, busway electrical distribution, emergency power off systems, and fault current protection. The section also addresses lighting, automation and control, bonding, grounding, lightning protection, and surge protection, as well as labeling, signage, testing, and quality assurance. These are all examined and detailed. I hate to fire hose you with this cloud of words, but hopefully this will help you decide whether the BISCI 002 standard would help you. If you decide to obtain the BISCI Data Center Design Consultant DCDS credential, you will be tested on this information. It's great to be knowledgeable about all areas of the data center since you may be the lead designer. You'll bring extra value to your client with comprehensive knowledge.
You're a DCDS, right?
Yes, I am.
That's why I hired you.
Data centers have specific goals. They provide data services with little interruption of these services. We've talked about the strategies and the standard for achieving this. Strategies such as availability, reliability, redundancy, diversity, quality, hardening, commissioning, maintenance, safety, and scalability. I haven't mentioned efficiency yet. There's extensive information regarding energy efficient strategies specific to individual systems throughout the standards, as well as an appendix devoted entirely to design for energy efficiency. This appendix has a reference to the efficiency content of the BISCI 002 2019 to easily find this information throughout the standard. Speaking of data center efficiency, the next standard is mechanical systems.
So this is all about motors?
Well, kind of, but not really. This is about cooling, or more specifically, heat rejection.
I see. I imagine data centers make a lot of heat. Will being in Maine help?
Glad you mentioned that. It can help with the energy efficiency and reducing electrical costs a great deal. Much like the electrical section, this information can aid a mechanical engineer that doesn't focus on data centers. The criticality of removing heat and delivering cold air to compact, dense spaces is a unique challenge. As mentioned before, all good standards cross-reference and harmonize with other national and international standards. This section starts with both code and standards references, as well as clarifying terminology. This is common to most sections in the 002 standard. To give you a specific example of content, here are the recommendations for the mechanical design found in the standard. This is in addition to the requirements which reference ASHRAE thermal guidelines. The heat rejection design should consider and provide for controls for temperature and humidity at the ITE inlet, adequate filtration and ventilation, special needs of direct cooled equipment, airflow patterns for heat dissipation within the room, avoidance of recirculation of hot air and bypass of cold air to the ITE, redundant cooling systems to suit the availability class of the facility, and architectural features such as tight air and vapor barriers. This mechanical section addresses ITE equipment needs, current trends, and airborne contaminants. It gives information on cooling technologies through a series of detailed descriptions and drawings, including a variety of direct expansion, chill water plant, in-row cooling, closed cabinet cooling, and air side economizers. An air side economizer would greatly reduce the cost at your data center.
I like the sound of that. Are there any disadvantages?
Yes, it's another system to install and maintain, and it also makes fire suppression more complex. But it's a rapidly maturing technology and would likely pay for itself in a short period of time.
Is that in a standard?
Maybe you should buy a copy and find out.
Good point.
After the descriptions of the various choices in heat rejection technology, including how some of the technologies can be combined to make a robust system, the standard lays out the description of availability class as it relates to mechanical systems. This too is heavily illustrated. I'll share the description of class 3 since that's what our scenario is today. So this is a quote. The mechanical systems possess redundancy so that any system or component may be taken offline without impacting the system's ability to meet the N cooling capacity required. The level of redundancy required will be either at the system level or at the component level in order to ensure that all the mechanical components can be maintained without impacting IT operations. A failure of any element in the mechanical systems will not result in the loss of cooling capacity for the load. Single points of failure shall not exist within the overall cooling system. A minimum of N+1 components shall be provided for components with high failure rates. More than N+1 is recommended as the number of modules required to meet N increases. So I read you that to show you how the availability class aligns through the systems. There are tables in each class breaking down the systems as an overview. Some of the other issues addressed in this section are pumps, pipes, valves, as well as airflow management as it relates to hot aisle, cold aisle, equipment layout, supply air layout, and return air layout. There are other mechanical design considerations discussing humidity, altitude of the site, noise levels, and supplemental cooling. Finally, there's a recommendation about design and operation of mechanical equipment, including computer room air conditioners, CRACs, and computer room air handlers, CRAs or CRAWs, chillers, cooling towers, thermal storage, and leak detection, to name a few. Next up is the fire protection section. Like we've discussed, this can help the engineer who may not be familiar with the challenges of fire detection and suppression in data centers. The dense concentration of electrical power that produces high heat as well as a fast velocity of air, can be problematic to designing thermal and smoke detection. Couple that with hot and or cold air containment, often by mechanical means, and raised floor systems can cause fire suppression design issues. The standard addresses this along with many other requirements, recommendations, and descriptions of fire detection, suppression, and alarm systems. With time running out, we'll zip through the few remaining sections. I hate to do this with the security section. It's exceptional. Security section addresses physical security, not cyber network security. This is covered in another section. Along with what you would expect, such as access control and surveillance camera systems, there is content about protecting the various physical elements of the data center. As I said before, there is also a section about disaster recovery plan. I'd like to mention one part that I'm really happy this included. There is a subsection on crime prevention through environmental design. I use these SEPTED concepts in my electronic safety and security designs and find it is a good way to contextualize the security needs for the client.
Does your class do security design?
Yes, in fact, we do it twice in the class. Next is a short section about facility, ancillary, and IP-enabled systems. This focuses on sensors, monitoring, and data aggregation from physical and network systems. This is commonly called Data Center Infrastructure Management, or DCIM. Not last, and certainly not least, is the section on telecommunications cabling, infrastructure, pathways, and spaces. I apologize for giving this short shrift. There's detailed requirements for telecom infrastructure designed by availability class. So we see the class 3 concept design, and we also see some topology. So cabling, so we have topology strategies, description of telecommunication spaces, outside plant design considerations, telecommunications pathways, media and connector considerations, testing, and labeling.
That sounds like RCDD stuff.
Yeah, you got it. Following telecom is an information technology section, the blinky light section. Again, the network requirements are described in the availability class context. Computer room layout is revisited here along with more media, connectors, and network transport protocols. Then we come to a really good section about commissioning. We discussed this at the start of the presentation. It's fabulous information. The last section before the non-appendices is data center maintenance. Much of the material here is found and expanded on in the new 009 2019 standard. So that's about all I can squeeze in. I thank everyone for your time. I hope you found this helpful. If you're interested in purchasing this standard, it can be ordered from the BISCI website, www.bixi.org, under the tab Standards. It's available in both print and electronic format. The combo of both print and electronic is a very good deal. If you're a BISCI member, you save $120 on the combo. It's also bundled in many other choices. Check it out. Well, thank you again, Dr. McCain.
You can call me Victoria.
I heard you. I'm calling you doctor to improve this presentation's gravitas.
I think you're a bit late.
Good point. And remember to join us next week for another data center standard presentation based on the life of Alexander Hamilton.
You're kidding, right?
Yeah, I'm kidding. Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is jmccain@bixi.
Xin cảm ơn các bạn. Mình xin tắt cái clip của mình. Clip này đã khá là dài rồi. Bây giờ đã được 2 tiếng 5 phút rồi. Rồi ok, mình xin tạm biệt các bạn. Hẹn các bạn là lần sau. Nếu các bạn có những thắc mắc gì về tiêu chuẩn của BISCI, TANC, cách đi cấp mạng như thế nào trong nhà máy nhỏ, trong môi trường nhỏ, đi theo thế nào cho nó tốt, đúng chuẩn, hoặc là test hệ thống cáp mạng, thì các bạn vui lòng bình luận bên dưới. Và tốt nhất các bạn hãy gửi email cho mình để mình có những cái thông tin chính xác, nó không có bị trôi. Đôi khi các bạn bình luận bên dưới mình sẽ bị trôi, thì các bạn có thể gửi email về cho mình sẽ sẵn sàng giải đáp và trả lời cho các bạn. Cảm ơn các bạn.